water, 3-hour fermentation, we use about 0.5% of fresh yeast. If I get 2 hours, about 1% fresh yeast. If I get for 1 hour, about 1.5. And let's say we wanted a no-time dough. Sometimes we got to run a machine doing dinner rolls in a bakery, and it's not meant for fermented dough, which nowadays there are lots of machines for fermented dough. You may do a 40% of your flour to pre-ferment, run the yeast at 1.5, 2.5%. About 20 minutes out of the mixing bowl, you're already going through the machine. That's why with baker's percents, it's good to have an understanding. But what I tell people is, you need to understand the concept of it. You need to understand the math of it. But then also, you basically need to get experience baking. Because you need to learn about flour, you need to learn about water, you need to learn about folding and fermentation and that relationship. So then you can apply that to baker's percents, and then there's really nothing you can do that you can't do. So if I say to you, what kind of bread you want to make? You want to make a beer bread, an apple bread, a oatmeal raisin bread, a maple pecan bread. You can go to the board and write it up, and unless you really have no idea what you're doing, you'll make something that will work. It may not be what you want on the first try, but it should be edible at least. If you go to the board and you say, I'm going to put in 30% water, it's not going to work. So you're never going to hydrate the flour, right? And if you go on the board and put 120% water, if it's all 100% whole wheat, you may get it together. But not with white flour. I mean, it'd be real tough, really tough. Maybe 100%. Okay, so then the last thing, it's about 6:30, but what I wanted to do last, again, because we could spend this could be a whole day, just baker's percents, and then formulating formulas. So this is one pre-ferment. You could add 2 pre-ferments, 3 pre-ferments, whatever you want. All you do is you insert another column, right? You insert a sponge column, insert a sourdough column, insert a biga column. The goal is just keep everything in line, okay? Always start with your total formula. So knowing this also allows you to take formulas that maybe aren't so tasty or complex and make them that way. So maybe your mother or a friend's mother or somebody said, you know, they make this squash roll or pumpkin roll for the holidays, and they give it to you and you want to make it. Or here's a good example, actually. I'll change track here. So my bakery, when I worked in the bakery, I ran a bakery for about 5 years. And I would try and keep the bakers engaged, and I would say, okay, just bring in some formulas and I'll make them. You know, we'll make them together. So we baked for our farmer's market once a week, and that allowed us to sell almost anything. As long as it was good bread, we could sell it at the farmer's market. People were out there to shop, they were out there to spend money, they were interested in trying something new every week. Well, what I didn't realize was what they were going to bring me was sometimes not so much what I wanted to make. So, because they come off only one girl, so out of 20 people, maybe one girl jumped at this opportunity. And she started bringing me these formulas from the internet. And they were very, like sauerkraut rye, which is actually a very good bread. There was a something potato rye bread. And these formulas were very home baker recipes, no percents, no pre-ferments. Well, so what we had to do was we put them into weights. So I said, okay, we'll make this, but we're going to make it, our way. So we put it all into weights first, convert it into percents, kind of figure out what type of bread. So like the sauerkraut rye, I remember because we made our own sauerkraut for it. So we used the rye levain, we made the sauerkraut fresh. We made it like a ciabatta style. So we put the original formula on paper, and then using percents, we're able to tweak it to the type of bread that we want it to be, and then come out with something that was pretty good. So you can take something that may be mediocre, or that you don't even know what type of bread it is, put it into percents, and now all of a sudden you have a complete understanding of that formula. And you have the ability to make it what you want it to be, and it can be pretty good. So you can say, oh, this has 50% white flour, 50% rye. Let's put half of that rye into the levain. This is 68% water. Let's make it 85% water, and make it like a rustic style bread or things like that. So it really can be a fun tool and gives you the freedom to do anything you want with baking. And it's a lot more accurate and a lot more to the point than saying, let's try. Let's add another pound of sauerkraut today. Let's add a teaspoon of caraway. Let's add a little bit more water. Instead, you say, let's add 1% caraway today. Let's add 2% more water today. You go to the mixing bowl, you test it, and then you add extra water, you measure that water, and then you convert it back into percents. So percents is like, it's such a compact functional way to keep track of the formula, to troubleshoot, to fine tune, and to really make it what you want to be. And what I like about Baker's percents too, and why I think you need to have your formulas in Baker's percents when you experiment, is you have to be able to come back to a starting point. So I do a lot with the Team USA, and the problem is we do a lot of experimenting, a lot of trials, and a lot of testing. So if you start right here with your formula, and you go, today you come over here and make something new, you've got to be able to come back here if you don't like it. Because if you go here, and then you go here, and then here, and here, and here, you almost just get lost. You know, you just keep trying these new things, you lose track of maybe what you had started to make with. So by having your formula Baker's percents, you make these changes in percents, you save a separate file, and then you come back to the original. Or let's say you get a batch of flour for whatever reason, this batch is taking less water, or more water. You figure out how much percent, so you go on the computer, if your formulas are in the computer, you change it to 70%, you save it, here's the new formula, it's 70% water. Then you realize, oh, the flour's back to what it was, or it's changed again. Then you go on the formula and you put it back to 68%. So it's the easiest way to keep track and to make consistent product and to really understand that product. Now one last thing that I was going to tell you also is, so in this final dough, these percentages, you know, there's no percentages right now anyway, but it would be helpful to have percentage in the final dough, but sometimes the reason that we don't emphasize it so much is because it can be a little bit misleading. So if I give you the formula of the final dough and salt, let's say the salt here is 2.4% or whatever it works out to be. But then you say, wow, that looks like a salty bread, right? Right off the top of your head. But that's because there's flour in this poolish that doesn't have any salt. And the total formula is 2%. So at a high level, when you get some, or not a high level like you're a genius or anything, but just a high level meaning your experience making bread and working with formulas, there's a good chance these percentages will mean something to you. Like, oh, 100% poolish, or so much water. And so maybe this water is only at 50% or 60%. Well, that's because a lot of the water is down here. So at this stage, we don't really emphasize the percents because they're misleading a little bit. But what they can do at this stage is they can help you scale up or scale down, which is another benefit of Baker's percents. So what we really focused on up to this point was understanding the formula and maybe writing the formula. But the other benefit of Baker's percents is like a conversion factor. So scaling up and scaling down, knowing the percents, makes that very easy. So how do you turn that into percents? It's just like we said in the beginning. We're basically dividing all of these numbers by our flour. So 80 divided by 80% would be 100. 48 divided by 80%. 2 divided by 80%. So we go down the list, we get those into percents. So maybe we can do that real quick with your, if you guys want to maybe help me out with the calculator. You can call these numbers off for me, and I'll just write it down. So I do 80, we know 80 divided by 80 is what, 100%, right? So 48 divided by 80 is just under, is it 60 on those? Then 2 divided by 80%. So basically when we say 80%, you're 2 divided by 80, hit the percent key, or 2 divided by 80 times 0.01. Or times 100, right? 2.5. Okay? 1.48 divided by 80.
1.85.
And what's 40? It's about 50%, right? Okay, so scaling up or scaling down, once you have these percents here, no matter what flour you put in here, and this could be at your total formula column too also. So now we don't need 100, we don't need pretty numbers so much, but if we did, no matter what number you have here, whether it's 100 or 200 or 50 or 60 or 75, Then you just multiply it by the percentage, and it gives you the rest of the ingredients.
Also, if you have an order for 800
Yeah, exactly.
baguettes, 250 grams each, you can
Right.
put your back.
Right, exactly. So what you're saying, so like Eric's saying, if you every day your orders are probably different, baker's percents allow you to get it down to the exact amount of dough that you want to make. And basically what you're doing is, if you add up all these totals, what do they add up to? 210, 13, 214, 38. What this is telling you is for every 100 pounds of flour, it makes 214.38 parts of dough per pound. So for every 100 parts of flour, 214.38 parts of dough. So then you can say, well, what if I don't have 100 pounds of flour, I only want 50 pounds of flour? Well, then 50 times 60%, 50 times 2.5, 50 times 1.8, 50 times 50%. But if you need to work backwards, what you're saying then is, I don't know how much flour I need, I just know that I need to make 300 parts of dough, or 300 pounds, because let's say it's 1 pound baguettes and you need 300 of them. So this is the math. Basically what you're saying is, for flour, how much do I need if I want to make 300 parts of dough, and I know that if I have 100, I can make 214.38 parts. So basically, you would cross multiply here, which is again the math part. So you would get what, 30000. And then you would divide this into this. And then you would end up with a number which would be 140. Okay. And then once you have that flour, the rest is going right back to the basics. So no matter how complicated we get, we always come back to the very basics. And that's why I always say you really need to have an understanding of the basics before you do anything advanced, because the advanced part of baker's percents is the basics, really. You just have to keep it step by step and piece by piece. So this is how, in a bakery, we make exactly what we need, and maybe we add 5% or what they call, you may drop a few baguettes on the floor, so you're going to make a few extra, or maybe when you scale, you're going to be off 0.1 pounds, which over many baguettes can be a lot of dough, so we may add a little extra, but the goal is to find out what the flour is. Once you find out what the flour is, the rest is pretty easy. And if there were 2 flours, you would just do the same thing, but you would do it twice. And you can actually do this with every ingredient if you wanted to. So basically you're saying, how much water do I need? If I want to make 300, when I have 60, I can make this much. So the tricky part about baker's percents is, a lot of people get scared of the math part of it. But it's really pretty basic. It only gets so complicated, I should say. It's not 1 + 1 = 2, but it's also not calculus. Most bakers we wouldn't dare do that anyway. So the point is, you've got to understand the basics. It's pretty simple math. If you can get over maybe a fear of math, if that's what's stopping you, you have to keep at it until you get it, because you'll never enjoy, I would say, the freedom of using baker's percents. Or like if you guys ever send me a formula and say, can you help me with this, the first thing I'm going to want to know is the percents. And when I say how much water you use and you tell me 3 cups, I'm going to pull my hair out. So before you call me, you make sure you learn. But anyway, thank you for coming again. Go have some fun tonight in Chicago. Come back tomorrow early. And remember to absorb as much of the experience as you can, not just what's in the classroom that you're in.